On September 26, 2025, Hungary shocked the world by announcing its intention to leave the European Union and join the BRICS Plus bloc. Prime Minister Orban's government is aligning with China and Russia, challenging the post-Cold War order. Hungary, long the EU's critic, has traded its seat at the European table for a new one among rising powers. The aftershocks will be felt across Europe and beyond. The question now, who, if anyone, will follow? To understand Hungary's break, we must look at its past. For decades, Hungary was a Soviet satellite, its 1956 revolution crushed, its people yearning for freedom. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 brought hope and a rush to embrace the West. EU membership in 2004 was celebrated as a final escape from Moscow's shadow. The early years brought prosperity, open borders, and a sense of belonging in Europe. But the 2008 financial crisis hit hard, exposing vulnerabilities and breeding disillusionment. In 2010, Viktor Orban's Fidesz party swept to power, promising to restore national pride and resist foreign influence. The relationship with Brussels soured as Orban's government clashed with the EU over democratic norms and sovereignty. Budapest saw Brussels as overreaching. Brussels saw Hungary as backsliding. The conflict became about more than policy. It was a battle over values and the future of Europe. Over time, trust eroded, and Hungary's enthusiasm for the European project faded. The stage was set for a dramatic rupture. Today's decision is the result of years of growing estrangement. Hungary's journey from model EU member to defiant outsider is a cautionary tale for the continent. The question, was this inevitable, or could it have been avoided? Viktor Orban's Eastern opening policy has defined Hungary's foreign relations for over a decade. He argued that Western dominance was ending and Hungary needed new partners to thrive. Orban built strong ties with Russia, Turkey, and especially China, positioning Hungary as a bridge between East and West. Critics saw this as a slow drift away from Western allies. Orban's illiberal democracy model, emphasizing national sovereignty and Christian values, clashed directly with EU principles. Hungary often blocked EU statements on China and Russia, frustrating its partners and eroding trust. Orban insisted these moves defended Hungarian sovereignty, not just defiance for its own sake. Over time, his government openly praised the BRICS model and criticized the West as stagnant and divided. The narrative, the East is dynamic and pragmatic, the West is in decline. This messaging prepared Hungarians for a break with the EU. The pivot east was not sudden, it was years in the making. Hungary's future, Orban argued, lay outside the EU's structures. The groundwork for today's historic decision was carefully laid. Now Hungary is charting a new course, one with profound risks and unknowns.
The announcement came from Parliament. Hungary will invoke Article 50 and begin its EU exit. Prime Minister Orban called it a step to reclaim Hungary's destiny, citing years of disrespect from Brussels. Simultaneously, Hungary accepted a formal invitation to join BRICS Plus, with accession talks set to begin immediately. Foreign Minister Szijjártó hailed the move as a historic opportunity to connect with the world's fastest-growing economies. The government unveiled a new sovereign wealth fund, seeded with EU recovery funds and a major loan from the China-led AIIB, over €50 billion. This fund aims to cushion the economic shock and attract BRICS investment. The announcement split the nation. Government supporters celebrated, while opposition parties called for protests, warning of economic collapse and isolation. The country is now deeply polarized. The government's gamble has divided Hungary, with both sides convinced they're fighting for the nation's future. The transition is underway, but the outcome is far from certain. Hungary's leap into the unknown has begun. The world is watching.
Hungary's pivot is inseparable from its deepening ties with China. Today, Budapest unveiled a sweeping new century strategic partnership with Beijing, covering infrastructure, technology, and security. Hungary will become China's central hub in Central and Eastern Europe. Major Chinese investments are on the way. A second cattle battery gigafactory, BYD's largest European EV plant, and a high-speed rail line linking Budapest to the Chinese-owned port of Piraeus. These projects total over €30 billion, meant to dwarf lost EU funds. Huawei will build Hungary's 5G and 6G networks, and joint research centers will focus on AI and biotech. Law enforcement cooperation is included, raising alarms in Western intelligence circles. For China, this is a strategic masterstroke, a secure base inside Europe, projecting economic and political power. Hungary's embrace of China signals to the world that there's a real alternative to the Western-led order. The dragon's embrace is now a reality in the heart of Europe. The balance of power is shifting. The consequences will be far-reaching.
The news from Budapest has rocked Brussels. EU leaders called emergency meetings, describing Hungary's exit as a grave mistake and a blow to European unity. Untangling Hungary from the EU will be far more complex than Brexit, given its deep integration in infrastructure and the Schengen area. Negotiations are expected to be bitter, with some members wanting to make Hungary's exit painful to deter others. The crisis exposes deep divides between Western and Central Eastern EU members. Populist parties across Europe are already praising Orban's move, fueling fears of political contagion. The EU's expansion policy is now in question. How can it promise stability to new members when current ones are leaving? Hungary's departure weakens the EU's geopolitical leverage and its power of attraction. The dream of a united Europe has suffered a major blow. The Union must now fight to prove its relevance and cohesion. The stakes for Europe's future have never been higher. The world is watching to see if the EU can hold together. The next moves will define the continent's fate.
For Hungary, leaving the EU is a monumental economic gamble. The country's industries are deeply tied to the EU single market. Leaving means new tariffs and barriers that could devastate exporters. The government hopes BRICS trade deals and Chinese investment will fill the gap, but this is far from certain. EU funds, a key driver of Hungary's growth, will be lost, replaced by loans that increase national debt and dependence on Beijing. Supporters believe freedom from EU rules will unleash new dynamism, turning Hungary into a Singapore on the Danube. Critics warn of recession, unemployment, and a collapsing forint. Multinational companies are reconsidering their presence, and the status of Hungarians living in the EU is now uncertain. The risk of a brain drain returning home could reshape society. Economic turmoil may fuel social tensions and political unrest. The government's promise of prosperity is central to its case for leaving. If that promise fails, the backlash could be severe. Hungary's future now hinges on whether this gamble pays off. The stakes are nothing less than the nation's economic survival. The world is watching closely.
Experts are scrambling to assess the ripple effects of Hungary's decision. Dr. Alina Polyakova calls it the most significant realignment in Europe since 1989. A country choosing a different civilizational model, Hungary has placed itself in the sphere of America's main rivals, creating a beachhead for Chinese and Russian influence in the heart of NATO and the EU. Economist Dr. Kenji Tanaka warns Hungary is trading a rules-based partnership for a patronage-based relationship with China, risking its economic sovereignty. Some see this as a major victory for China, legitimizing BRICS as a real alternative to the G7. Others argue Hungary is unique. Its history and Orban's leadership created a perfect storm unlikely to be repeated elsewhere. Most Central and Eastern European countries still see the EU and NATO as their best guarantees of security. Hungary may find itself isolated, a client state caught between two competing blocs, the risk belonging fully to neither and reaping the costs of both. The world is watching to see if Hungary's gamble inspires others or serves as a cautionary tale. The new dividing lines in Europe are ideological as much as geographical. The Iron Curtain may be gone, but new barriers are rising. The future of Europe hangs in the balance. Hungary's exit from the EU is a watershed moment, shattering the post-Cold War dream of a united liberal Europe. The continent is once again a battleground of great power competition. This time, the dividing lines are ideological. The choice between a West led by Washington and Brussels and an East shaped by Beijing and Moscow is now real. The EU must urgently address its internal divisions and prove that unity offers more than nationalist alternatives. For citizens across the West, Hungary's story is a reminder. Democracy and alliances must be defended, not taken for granted. The allure of authoritarian efficiency is strong, but the challenge is to show that democracy can still deliver. As the dust settles, the world will watch Hungary's journey. Will it become a bridge or a cautionary tale? The old maps are gone, new ones are being drawn. The choices made now will shape the 21st century. One thing is certain, nothing can be taken for granted anymore. Europe stands at a crossroads, its future uncertain.